special to show you today, and it's to do with our sound qua, 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 qua. And these are some qua, qua, qua quilts. Now this one is very, very special because this one belonged to Miss McDonald's grandma. And she was so kind enough to let me have this. Now, can you see that in those days, people used to make their own clothes, and if there was a little bit of fabric left over, they would save it and they would stitch it together by hand using a needle and thread to make a nice bed cover. And if you look closely, you can see all the different types of stitching on there. And usually a group of ladies would get together and they'd all sit around the quilt together and sew different pieces on. And then on the back, when it was all finished, they sewed one piece of fabric on the back. Now this is old and this has been patched even. Can you see there must have been a hole there, and so they didn't want it to rip any further, so somebody's put a patch on it. And there are all sorts of different fabrics on here. There is some velvet, there is some cotton, and they've even put some embroidery stitches on the plain fabric. You see like a star. Somebody decided to make that star to make it look pretty, and all the different stitches people have chosen to do. This one is a zigzag stitch. This one's like a little star stitch. This one's like a sort of a herringbone stitch. So you can imagine all those ladies years ago sitting around together, Miss McDonald's ancestors, and putting all those together, all these pieces of fabric together, and the things they might have chatted about years and years ago. So we're very lucky to have this quilt all put together. Now here's another quilt that also belongs to Miss McDonald, and she's been kind enough to let me have it. I promised, of course, I would look after it. She knew I would. This one, can you see? It's still made up of lots of different pieces of fabric, but there's a pattern. They're like fan shapes, aren't they? And you can see on this fan, there we are. It's gone dark, light, dark, light, dark, light. This one here has gone blue, pink, blue, pink, blue, pink. So they've got some patterns in there, not only in the shapes, but also in the different kinds of fabric they've used. Every fan has got the same sort of fabric on. Now, if I turn this over and show this to you on the back, it doesn't have a piece on the back, you can see the inside, but this has been put together with a sewing machine. So if I show you really close up, you see that wasn't done by somebody sewing with a needle and thread. It's still made by hand, but somebody's put that in the sewing machine. So probably what they did was they made all the separate fans first, and then they sewed them all together. So these are two fabulous qua 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 quilts. This one is more modern than the other one. This one is not as old as this one, as Miss Marsha's grandmother's quilt. So, and also you can see this one was made on purpose with a pattern. The person making this quilt, or the people making this quilt, knew what it would look like before they started. They had a pattern to work to. But this quilt was just put together as they went along with whichever scraps of fabric they had, all different shapes and sizes. So I'm sad that we're not all together so that you can feel the quilts, because they feel so good, and usually we would all sit round and feel those quilts. And if you were in my class last year, you may remember doing that. So, but I hope you've enjoyed seeing the qua 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 quilts today to go with our sound this week of qua 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 qua.